Oh, thank you for the woo-woo. I appreciate you. I love a good woo-woo. All right, guys, thanks so much. We really appreciate you being here. So far, we've had some amazing content. We've talked about scaling. We've heard from the regulators. We've talked about discounts, real issues for this market, and ideally, everybody's getting some good education out of this. I want to bring up our next panel. I want to keep us on time as we move into the afternoon. Just a couple of quick notes for you. You'll find QR codes on the back of your badge. You'll find them up on the screen during our sessions, right? Today only, we are offering for our next event in Chicago, the big one that we do every year in Chicago, the national one. It's the lowest price that we'll offer, right? I think it's like $200 a ticket. If you sign up on site, for Chicago, it's like $1,500 a ticket, right? So today, best rate ever for that event. Just a quick heads up for you that have not signed up for Chicago yet. You might want to do so today, okay? Next up, I'm bringing out a good friend from Trailblaze PR, Lisa Weser. Lisa Weser is going to lead this panel talking about how to reach Ohio's adult use cannabis market. Let's give it up for Lisa and her panel, please. Thank you very much.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back from lunch. I was telling Patrick I could never decide if this is the best or the worst time for a panel. We'll find out today. So yes, I'm Lisa Weser. I'm the founder and CEO of Trailblaze. We're a marketing and communications firm serving the cannabis industry. We put brands on the map with a more sophisticated CPG approach to marketing and communications in the space and brand storytelling. And we have a really stacked panel here for you today. And from what I've heard, marketing is everyone's biggest gripe. Ohio is one of the biggest and most interesting and most diverse markets in states, I think, but also probably one of the more complex to navigate from a marketing perspective. So we have some amazing experts here. Melissa Merse, who is managing partner at Ascension Biomedical, an Ohio-based craft cannabis cultivator and processor of medical and recreational cannabis. Travis Scadron, who is SVP of Business Development and Employee #1 at Surfside, a marketing and data technology platform that helps cannabis businesses like dispensaries and brands collect and activate consumer data and run targeted advertising campaigns across Google and Meta and other traditional platforms you're going to want to hear about. Stella Morrison, who's the founder and content strategist at the award-winning woman-owned firm CannaContent, bringing a journalist lens to search strategy for cannabis and hemp companies. And finally, Tiana Arriaga, who's VP of Product and Marketing at Standard Wellness, Ohio's first vertically integrated cannabis company. And they operate both the retail brand, The Forest, and also have a few different house product brands as well. So a real diverse amount of perspectives from operators and ancillaries here in Ohio. So we're going to kick it off with a question for Melissa and for Tiana. You're both operators building brands here in this highly regulated and constrained market. How are you differentiating your products and doing that in a way that emotionally connects with consumers when you don't have some of these traditional advertising platforms on the table?
Hi, my name is Melissa. For us at Ascension and previously, it's been about the community. It's been about culture. I heard it up here today from some of the CEOs. The pillars of culture, quality, and empathy are our 3 pillars, and the community comes in for those things and stays because we provide those things at the store level. With the marketing being the way it is, you have to connect to your guests, no matter what you're doing in any way, shape, or form. So, and then we have, since we're vertically integrated, the passion that we can put into our flower, I can bring that back and have the team be able to show that through the sales technique. So the commitment to the relationship with our grow, our lab, and the retail store just connects it and brings it all together. And I feel like guests really enjoy knowing where their flower comes from. Typical everyday question, where is this at? When I can tell them it's Low down the street, a Treehouse, it's OGS across the street, it's King City in Cincinnati, they find value in knowing where their flower comes from. So education is key there for all of our vendors.
Yeah, I'd like to echo on community and education, but I also think, like, we're always running as fast as we can with lean teams to build things because we don't have enough people to build the said things. And it's like, why are we doing this? Is your brand just a flower brand to have flower and make sales, or is it a brand that you really want to bring some of the best genetics and it's like a flower staple? Or are you planning on extracting that into some of the best solventless hash you've ever seen? Is it 6-star full melt? Or is it a vape brand for people who just want to get high and they don't want to taste weed? Like, there's so many aspects, I think, to building brands and understanding your consumer and being consumer obsessed. Because in this market where we can't really market in the way that we would like to, because of the restrictions, you have to go deeper into your brand segmentation to understand who you're engaging with. Standard Wellness has a new pre-roll brand called Fish Whistles that's coming out that partners with watersheds and fish conservation for those outdoor enthusiasts. And so you have to be consumer obsessed and be dedicated to the process, because if you're just producing to produce to make sales, that's where I see the biggest divide that's going to happen across the board, is because the attention to your consumers just isn't there. So consumer obsessed, I think, is a really important fact when you're crafting brands or even crafting promotions to reach certain people in the way that you can, especially in Ohio.
And it sounds like we're talking about really two different types of marketing. We're talking about the marketing that happens inside the store and the conversations that happen inside the store. And then we're talking about the messaging that is happening that's bringing people inside the store, the content marketing. Stella, I know that's very much a space where you operate in this kind of silent marketing landscape where we can't do or say much outside of the dispensary. How does your content, whether it's your owned, your earned, your educational content, how is that strategically used to build brand credibility, and how does SEO visibility and AI all help kind of people find and discover your brand?
Silent marketing is such an accurate way to describe what happens in Ohio. I love the phrase, and I'm stealing it. So content's one of my first go-tos and one of my favorite things to play around with, because it serves multiple purposes. And when you're dealing with when you're dealing with smaller budgets, when you're dealing with time constrictions, any sort of regulatory constriction, the most value that we can get out of something is fantastic. So it's great for your brand visibility, because people need to know who you are in order to even show up at your store or buy your product. They need to know who you are, and it's a way for them to discover you, because if you think they're not pulling out their phones in the aisles, or in the aisles metaphorically, and Googling you while they're standing there, I got something to tell you. You're looking at, it's another way to establish connection to community from an SEO perspective, which is really where I come from, search engine optimization. It is a top way that people are finding dispensaries is by searching for you on search engines like Google, which is still 90% of the market share. So yes, ChatGPT, et cetera, but I'm not going to take the whole half an hour to go into that. But it's great for local SEO because it helps position you as a member of the community. It's a way to send what's called signals to search engines, so they understand who you are, what you're about, and your place within this landscape. But one of the biggest challenges when we say, without crossing regulatory lines, is something you'll hear me talk about, a little bit later, about, the lines being blurry and ill-defined. So what I would say to somebody generally when they're starting out is just use common sense to start out with. Don't make claims on products. Make sure that the content is adult or 21 plus oriented. Don't glorify getting too stoned. These are things that regulators generally don't want to see, even though that is probably the purpose for some people who shop, which is legitimate purpose. We just want to make sure we are staying above board that way.
That makes sense. Well, I want to come back to some practical tips in a little bit around SEO and how people can actually put this in practice. But wanted to pivot for a moment to talk about platforms like Google and Meta, where those are platforms where most consumers are connecting and discovering brands, and they are very difficult for cannabis marketers. But I think because of that, a lot of people just avoid them completely. And Travis, it sounds like that's something that can be kind of a common misnomer about cannabis, that you have to avoid those completely. How are you guys helping your customers navigate those platforms, but in a compliant way that kind of cleverly skirts some of those regulations to still reach consumers?
You can advertise in Ohio on mainstream apps and websites if you target the correct people, and you use a platform that keeps you compliant in your targeting. So once you've built a product and then understood who that product serves and who you want to reach with that product, and you've built an engine like a website and SEO that can capture people on the internet, then you need to find platforms that will increase the hose, that will turn the water up and start driving more people into that environment so that you can convert them. But when you start serving ads to those people, you need to, one, make sure that they're 21 and up, and two, you need to make sure that they have attributes of a customer that has bought a product like yours before, or they look like they have the attributes of someone who has bought a product like yours before, or they've shopped at a competitor, or whatever it may be. So once that audience is developed, you use a platform that can accurately target those people and do so compliantly, and the DCC approves these types of platforms all the time, whether or not you realize it's happening with your competitors or not.
What are some of the most popular or effective platforms that you've found, especially for Ohio operators that are working well that maybe people aren't thinking about?
Yeah, Google and Facebook or Meta are hard because they don't actually allow it, but there's ways around that. Programmatic advertising or display advertising, that's serving ads on millions of mainstream apps and websites like the Rolling Stone or USA Today, but you only serve the ad to the user if there's someone whose device you've pre-identified as being worth hitting, and then you should have an attribution platform or a measurement platform that's telling you, I served this ad to this device, and then they checked out through my Dutchie or my Jane or my Blaze or my Trees, FlowHub, and so programmatic advertising is the cheapest entry point. Google and Meta are very expensive to get started, but you should be there eventually. And then there's digital merchandising. So you'll see dispensaries turning on ad zones within all of their menus now and selling that ad space to the wholesale brands that they carry. And that's a fully 21 up compliant place to be advertising because it's fully approved by the DCC. That website has been good to go. And that is one of the best places as a wholesale brand that you can reach people is when they're on a menu deciding what they want to buy. The same way that you want a bud tender to recommend you when you walk into a store as a wholesale brand. If 30% of sales in Ohio are happening online, who's recommending you on the e-commerce environment? So yeah, those are some places.
Okay, so you mentioned budget. Most cannabis operators that I have worked with are on a somewhat limited budget and are really looking for ROI. So if you have customers, and this is for you too, Stella, that have a limited marketing budget and they're just looking for impact, where do you tell them to start? What do you think is the, kind of 101 most effective place they're going to see ROI?
Get your foundations right. Without foundations, you are going to find yourself in trouble 6 months down the line, a year down the line, when more competition comes into place and you have trouble differentiating yourself from other folks who are either in retail or other brands in the space. Just like everyone in this room has a Starbucks or a Dunkin' opinion, people have opinions on the dispensaries they're shopping and the brands they're buying, even if it doesn't feel as large a debate as something more mainstream. So what is a foundation? And this is where I'm going to talk a little bit practical for a minute, Lisa. Your brand identity, who you are, what you stand for, and why people want to look for you. You need to get that done right in the beginning. It's not enough to just put together a quick logo for your investor deck and then all of a sudden you own a dispensary. I will tell you this, I have seen folks who go that route, they don't succeed. So keep your brand in mind. Brand identity is also going to become very important as AI search becomes more prevalent. So ChatGPT, systems like that look from a search perspective, they are looking for the brands that people know and are familiar, and they're looking for verification from other sources. So that brand identity you have to be interesting in order for people to talk about you. So that all starts with that. Is your website fast? Is it easy to navigate? Is it something that people really know what to do when they get there, whether that's a store locator or to find your menu so they can shop and check out? That is all a crucial part of the experience that also needs to be done right correctly, and that involves your search engine optimization as well. These things, in my view, come together. precisely because without these foundations, you're not going to go far. It's the brand identity, the website, local SEO, your tech stack also as well. Which platforms are you bringing in? What's your point of sale? Who's your menu? Make those decisions early and invest in those early, because especially from an SEO perspective, search takes time. SEO takes time. Ads are faster because you're paying for traffic, and so that's a pretty instant. You start to see results faster. SEO takes time. The age of your brand and property takes time, and unfortunately, for all of my experiments, the time machine does not work, and I have to take that into account. So you want to think about all these things as you're moving forward. That would be my recommendation: is invest in those foundations first, and then you can, when your foundation is strong, you can build on that. I also recommend for those who are opening, PR and paid advertising in component, because I think that helps push your brand identity forward. That helps you build customer lists before you even open or before you even launch. So you can start marketing to those customers, to the limits that you have in Ohio. You can start marketing to them pretty much right away.
I have a question that's really for all of you, but Tiana, I'm particularly interested in your thoughts on this. The idea of who is a high value customer, and how much you're spending to bring a customer in. But we've got kind of a bifurcated situation in Ohio now, where we have these medical customers that have been coming in for a long time, and people that really understand cannabis are more sophisticated and are coming in looking for specific strains, and then we have this kind of newer customer, the adult use customer, that's maybe never been in a dispensary before, and they're coming maybe because they want to try a sleep gummy. Maybe they have used alcohol in the past and they're interested in exploring cannabis. That's a different type of acquisition, because it's a customer that has not shopped for cannabis before. How are you reaching those customers? And I'm curious, from whether it's in-store experiences, or from a data perspective, is it a different approach to marketing to reach those folks?
Yeah, so again, if you throw the whole kitchen sink and hope to catch everybody, that's a strategy that we know will fail completely. You can't speak to everybody and do it efficiently and expect to have positive ROI or ROI that makes sense, because it just doesn't happen. So that's, for us being a smaller MSO, we don't have the luxury of just one brand that we can focus on and attach our flag to. So we know what our core capabilities are really well. And genetic, big thing. Ohio is going to see a lot of amazing genetic from us. And when I say that, things that are very popular in other areas for flavor profiles, and also the consumers that are searching for those. So that's one component that I think really goes for the headier consumer, or someone who's more of a weed snob, or someone who's very educated. But then there's also brands that are coming to light that are educational and are for the cannabis curious human who doesn't have a lot of experience, but it's more CPG focused. Because whether, you guys might crucify me on this, who we market to right now is really the minority in cannabis. When this thing blows fully wide open, CPG is CPG. It's 70% of the market is gonna be low dose users, cannabis curious users, beverages, edibles. And so we're kind of operating in a vacuum right now of who we're talking to, this echo chamber of the most educated consumers we're dealing with right now, I think, broadly. But it's not, people don't like to hear that, So cannabis culture, what it is at its core, when you're looking at things that identify with the strain hunters or the connoisseurs or people who are really tapped in, I see that being such a smaller part of the market. And as you're building brands that can reach people who really have limited experience with this plant, and you can bring them into the fold safely, and not ruin their experience, and give them something that is smart and repeatable and consistent. I think that's a really thoughtful way if you're in this for the long haul and you're like, well, I want to be an operator in 20 years. Well, that's how we need to be thinking about building brands, is how this will survive CPG when eventually it's knocking on all of our doors in a widespread way.
So I have a follow-up question for you, Melissa, because I think you're kind of the definition of boots on the ground. You have worked your way up through retail for many years, so you are used to working with medical consumers. You've seen the shift into adult use coming in. What are the tactics that are working? Let's say we get these folks in store, they wander into their first dispensary. What are you doing in terms of in-store experiences, bud tender education? Like once you're actually, you've got them in the door, how are you selling to them and educating them? How do you get them to come back? What's working or not working in store?
What's working in the store is good old-fashioned human connection. There's no kiosk in our current stores because we find that there's more questions that need to be asked. And instead of just putting someone at a kiosk and showing them the deals and walking away, doesn't give that chance of that one-to-one connection for the guest to ask more questions. That's where it really comes down to. I believe then, what I'm hearing from the guest every day, Cincinnati is different than Cleveland. I can tell you that without a doubt. But in Cleveland, I see more people asking more questions about low-dose edibles. In Cincinnati, I didn't hear that as much. I heard more about potency in flower, new genetics, because in the Cleveland market, I have to fight Michigan, right? We all know that. So what we did is we really empowered communication to the guest. We've empowered education in the stores. There's a patient education day. All my vendors are asked to do a patient education day. If I buy from you, at least once every other month, you need to be on my schedule. The guests want that one-to-one interaction. They want to know where the products are coming from and what effects they're going to have. So a kiosk just doesn't work for the future of cannabis. I've seen it in other places, and yeah, there's volume, but there's no human connection, for sure. And sometimes they're dirty and sticky, and that's not what a guest wants to touch, right? That's the first impression, is your kiosk is dirty. So, think about those when you're putting these new operators into play. I've been in the market since the beginning. I've had my license since March of 2019. We didn't have kiosk at all whatsoever. So for me, it was a way to build the business and not lose what we worked so hard to do in this industry.
On that note, we've talked about bringing people into the dispensary, but how does the dispensary go into the community or the brand into the community? So this is really for all the panelists, but what is working in terms of being able to actually build connections in the community, especially in a state like Ohio, as we've said. Cleveland is a very different market than Columbus is a very different market than Cincinnati. And, where I think that's very unique about this state. So what types of partnerships are working, or have you tried things that have failed?
As this retail store is new in Cleveland, we have really gotten into the Seven Hills community area. We do things like we're teaming up with the local VFW for Veterans Day. That's allowed. We can get cereal boxes right now with the SNAP benefits with the VFW. That's allowed. We can talk about things inside the gas stations, the libraries. I've been in many libraries on Senior Citizen Day and did a presentation. There's all kinds of things you can do. You just have to get out and you have to be a part of your community. What do you do at Standard?
I think something that I've really enjoyed, operations and manufacturing is really part of my background, and so I get to be more creative in this role, which is just like lighting my soul on fire. It's amazing, and in a good way. But for us, every dispensary looks different, because we're taking the local aesthetics of like people and characteristics and try to build something that feels good to be at when you're in that area. And again, it's not going to hit with everybody, but we have a huge dispensary in Utah, and it takes a lot. Like there's beautiful murals that just like reinforce the local topography and how beautiful it is, and reinforces. So like someone who's native to Utah, when they walk through that store, they're like, wow, this feels like my home store. Like this feels good. And I think like it's a luxury when you can design that way, but also it's like if you have a store that feels like a trap shop, then who's going to be shopping there? Is that the demographic that you want? And it's like the community that we're trying to also aspire to be a part of, we're also trying to put that feeling in the stores. So when we have people coming through, it just feels good to be there. And also, outside of the other community stuff, it's always so weird when you have like an eclectic neighborhood with all the, like Cleveland Heights. If you guys know Cleveland Heights, it's like a beautiful area of Cleveland with old homes. And then if you have something that's like super new, it'll just feel off and weird. And so integrating into the local culture of how people feel, I think, is a CPG tactic that has been around for a long time. And it's just newer to us in this space.
Okay, so let's get into the topic a bit of compliance, because there's a lot of creativity on this panel and in this room, but we do have some particularly restrictive regulations in the state of Ohio. And for some of you, you're operating in either multiple markets in Ohio or multiple states, and Ohio is just one of them, and there isn't kind of a one-size-fits-all solution. And even, when we talked about whether you have a kiosk or not, I know there's a lot of people that have technology platforms in this room that may not want to hear that, but the flip side is everybody has a phone in their pocket, right? So you've got a kiosk in your hand at all times, which is also probably pretty dirty, by the way, but either way, we all have a kiosk in our hand at all moments and times when we're shopping, right? So what have you guys found to be like the most maddening or restrictive regulation that you're dealing with? And what are some creative ways that you are navigating above and around that to still build your brands or help your clients build their brands?
I got the look, okay. So my theory is every single company in cannabis across the US has their own risk tolerance. And in some places, some folks want to be very letter of the law. Some people kind of just don't care. And I'm of the opinion that compliance and marketing are peas and carrots and need to be, especially in Ohio right now. But there's one incy problem with this, which is we don't really have any rules yet, which makes this really, really difficult, because if we want to push the envelope, if we want to push lines, we need lines, and we don't have those yet. Rules were supposed to come out over a year ago, and that's resulted in logistical and financial consequences, especially for smaller operators. Logistically, you don't know, because there's no mandate on like how many days you need response from the Department of Cannabis Control, so you don't know when you're going to get a response or if you're going to get a response. The replies that you're getting are inconsistent. Some people are saying yes, and you get someone's doing something very similar, they're getting a no with no reason why. And you pay $100 per submission for the privilege of being told no. So this makes it very, it makes it difficult for folks to plan, which is already kind of difficult enough in cannabis. So, from the logistical perspective, there's one other point I wanted to mention. So, the acceptance and rejection, it feels arbitrary, and it's based on precedent, maybe. Like, it's very, we're kind of not sure. And this will probably evolve and change, because, things happen, because it moved from the Board of Physicians to Department of Commerce to now the Department of Cannabis Control. Things will move, but things get lost in the process. But what happens when things get lost in the process? Retailers and brands get fined. That's what happens. And these fines are steep. I've heard $5,000, $12,000, famously $100,000 plus when adult use, came out because it was too recreational. But who defined too recreational, right? So these are challenges that we're still facing, and it makes it hard to operate, makes it frustrating. So when you have a great idea, my recommendation is be clear with the representatives in the Department of Cannabis Control and document everything. Be very clear. Don't try to hide things. Share everything. Develop a good relationship and have reasonings to be able to discuss, why you want to be doing something. You have to think about also planning in advance as much as possible and having alternative plans. So I'll tell you, for our clients in Ohio, we have backups for everything that we do. So I'll give you a Halloween example. We sent out, we were not allowed to say Happy Halloween on a social post. We had a backup already that already had Happy Halloween removed, because we thought that might happen. So, but you know what? That's something that needs to be planned for and paid for. So that doesn't make this easy. We have 2 minutes left, so I'm going to cut it off there.
Travis, how about on the digital side, and when people are preparing advertising in advance?
There's 3 buckets for compliance in media. We do this in liquor, tobacco, healthcare, insurance. It's the audience. You need to make sure that you're serving an ad to someone above the legal age. It's the inventory, so that's where you're serving it. You cannot do billboards in Ohio, but you can do digital. In California, 71.6% of the audience on a website needs to be 21 and up. In Massachusetts, it's 85%. So we have to cut out any websites that don't meet those requirements when we're serving the ads. Ohio hasn't made that rule yet, right? So we just do above 85, I believe, because that's the most stringent. And then there's the creative itself, right? And so you cannot show consumption is the number one. That comes from like the Joe Camel days and the Marlboro Man days. You cannot make smoking look cool, right? So if you are checking your inventory, your audience, and your creative, and checking the boxes within your state, you're good to go. It's not rocket science. You can get it done.
That's really good practical advice. And I know this has gone quick. We're in our kind of last final minute. So just for a lightning round for each of you, what's one piece of advice you'd give a cannabis entrepreneur in this room to help them kind of break through the silence and build a loyal audience in Ohio's adult use market?
Don't give up. Put your assets in, see if they get approved, put them back in again. Don't give up. It might be a no today, but tomorrow it'll be a yes.
Segment your audiences. You should be sending one message to your active customers, one message to your lapsed customers, and one message to people you've never talked to before. And if you meet someone with a message that speaks to how they know you and the level of interaction that you've had with them, then they'll feel like you're speaking to them, and they'll have a higher conversion rate.
Be you, be authentic. People want authenticity in their brands, who they shop with. They want to be able to have that relationship, and it takes time and effort because people see through bullshit. So invest now. This is the time to establish who you are, who you want to be, and who you want others to understand, how others perceive you.
I mean, I echo all these things, but I think also lean into your community. There's a lot of operators, there's a ton of marketing people, product submission compliance, and I think that we don't talk to each other enough in this market to be like, hey, what's working for you? Because it's competitive. Like we need to help each other in this. There is no path forward in a world where we're not talking more, and I think like being new to Ohio, because I'm not from here, I think that's just very apparent, and I look forward to speaking to more of you on all of these things.
Amazing. All right. Well, I think that's it. Do we want to do any Q&A, or I know we've got another one coming
I'm
up?
afraid we're out of time, my friend.
Okay.
But thank
Well,
you.
thank you guys so much for your time.
What a wonderful panel,
Thank you guys for your attention.
What
and
great
persevere.
advice there at the end, too. Thank you, guys. Thank you, thank you, thank you.